Star Wars and Lucasfilm. I remember the days when those brands actually meant something. The days back when Lucasfilm was driven by a desire to tell good stories anyone anywhere could enjoy. Now, granted, not every single project Lucasfilm was involved in turned out to be gold, but you knew the moment you saw the Lucasfilm logo, it promised something ambitious, something that would hopefully transport you to a different world, where you could just absorb the fantasy and more often than not, visual effects that continuously push the boundaries for their time. In 2012, all of that changed when George Lucas decided to sell his company and along with it the super valuable intellectual property known as Star Wars to the company he affectionately called White Slavers.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and okay, but
and placed his longtime producing partner, Kathleen Kennedy, in charge as its president. Look, there isn't much that I can say about Kathleen Kennedy at this point, which the internet hasn't already stated 4.3 billion times already. But what I can do is share my opinion. She is absolutely clueless and has single-handedly driven Lucasfilm and by default, Star Wars into the ground.
But Kuro, how do you know she is the one to blame?
Well, as the president of the company, the buck stops with her. Every idea, every project, and every script requires her approval prior to being greenlit. Of course, she has her hardcore defenders like this man, who love to point out how successful Kathleen Kennedy was as a producer.
I am a Kathleen Kennedy fan, and I will be for the rest of my days. She is one of the greatest producers in Hollywood history.
To that I say, it's hard to mess up such a gig when you're married to Frank Marshall, a longtime producing partner of Steven Spielberg. Running a studio, however, yes, very different story altogether, as we're all finding out. Fast forward 9 short years, and she has all but permanently tarnished the brand. It continues to limp on, barely in life support mode, but there is no denying that Star Wars is now a brand that most people associate with total indifference, if not outright negativity. It seems more and more that people in the online space have just become so numb to it all. Indifference is the absolute worst thing that can happen to a brand, and at this point, it's like everything that comes out of Lucasfilm is met with either laughter or just deafening silence. I believe the general audience is still eager to check it out for no other reason than just to verify whether it really will be as terrible as it looks. And I personally feel, with the exception of the first 2 Mandalorian seasons, every project has more than met the "will this be terrible" expectation. You see, to Kathleen Kennedy, the goal is simple. Star Wars needs to evolve past its fans. You know, the ones who made it the multi-billion-dollar 4+ decade brand it became. Star Wars is now all about appealing to the non-existent modern audience. The ones who perpetually sit around on Twitter/X complaining about representation, smashing the patriarchy, and ending toxic masculinity. The ones who were never going to pay to see Star Wars in the first place, and the ones who were never going to pay to see Star Wars ever, regardless of how desperately Kathleen Kennedy panders to them.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Now, top all of this up with the Disney Plus exclusive Star Wars live-action TV shows that range from extreme mediocrity to laughably amateur, complete with a very public firing of the one and only legitimately strong female employee Lucasfilm ever had, and this is where we find current-day Star Wars. A brand so obsessed with making every single character diverse under the guise of,
"Hey, it's a big galaxy, bruh. Can't expect everyone to be white."
but to also completely deconstruct and subvert everything which made the brand so great in the first place, and make everything female-centric because men are toxic. You see, according to the activists now employed by Kathleen Kennedy to be in charge of current and future Star Wars projects, it was was never about good and evil.
The best parts about Star Wars is there is no good or evil. It depends on what side you're standing on, truly. You know what I mean? That you can look at any angle and see yourself.
Star Wars, apparently, has always been about perspective. Luke was never the hero, Darth Vader was never a villain, the Empire was never bad, and the Jedi were never the good guys. Something which I absolutely cannot wait for the upcoming Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Acolyte, to expose in greater depth. You know a show is going to be fantastic when the only thing the cast can say about it is how diverse everything is.
To see such a diverse group played out now.
Yeah, I feel like we are part of a wave of more inclusive and more beautifully represented.
Part of the wave that is ushering in inclusion and safety for Black nerds.
Isn't that right, Rings of Power?
It's wonderful to see not only some diversity across the entire show, but also diversity being in positions of power.
Imagine taking a female-centric brand like Barbie and trying to cater it to a male audience. Not only that, but imagine insulting their female audience, calling them toxic, accusing them of misandry and bigotry for refusing the change. This is modern Star Wars. This is what it does. Let me be clear. Star Wars has always been a brand which both males and females could enjoy. Was it specifically targeted to females? No, it was not. And this is where Disney's never-ending obsession with taking male-centric brands and turning it female comes in. They do this because the oh-so-predictable and the oh-so-tired diversity quotas demand it. And because in their mind, they're appealing to an even bigger audience, the modern audience. Disney's belief is that if they take something which was primarily the target for males, and as you know, males make up 50% of the population, by making it more female-centric, they can obtain that other 50% of the population and voila! Sounds great, right? Except that's not really how it works. This type of obsessive activism and identity politics, which borders on mental illness, is crippling not only Star Wars, but every other major intellectual property out there, especially the ones under Disney's umbrella. Like so many of you out there, I grew up reading superhero comic books. I grew up watching Star Wars and read quite a few of the expanded universe Star Wars books. Genuinely thrilling stuff, which for the most part respected the original lore and added layers of depth to it. Well, that is until Lucasfilm decided that none of it mattered and that none of it was canon, and yeah, go fuck yourselves. I found The Force Awakens to be ever so mediocre. Finn probably had the most interesting journey, defecting from Stormtrooper to a Resistance fighter, but ultimately had any potential squandered as Lucasfilm were hell-bent on making Daisy Ridley's Rey the undeserving be-all, end-all, most powerful Jedi ever, and the main star of the show. When watching 2017's The Last Jedi, it became abundantly clear that this new Lucasfilm leadership had no respect for the past.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Packing the movie with so much not so subtle political messaging and reducing all the male characters into impulsive hotheads and incompetent old men who need to be shown the error of their ways by their intellectually, physically, morally superior female leads. A trope, by the way, which Lucasfilm would go back to time and time again in most of their Star Wars TV shows, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and the now infamously scrapped for a tax write-off, Willow. The message just keeps getting more and more aggressive. We get it, Lucasfilm. You hate your audience, and you're all about rewriting the past to gaslight the audience into believing the future. A trend all too common in not just entertainment, but our everyday lives. You're all about the new audience you're convinced is out there, waiting to drink, gargle and swallow all this new diarrhea you're oozing out. To that, I will simply say, good luck. It truly is fascinating to see such a beloved intellectual property and the company that controls it ruined by such egotistical, entitled, clueless, narcissistic, blood-sucking leeches who prioritize identity politics and representation over good storytelling and well-written characters. Ugh, rest in peace, Lucasfilm and Star Wars.
50% of our executive team are women. And 6 out of 8 of the people in my story group are women. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be surprised that we're making Star Wars movies and the majority of the people involved in the development of those stories are women.
I have to go now. Somewhere out there in the void, exorcism needs performing.
I've kind of lost control of Star Wars, so it's going off in a different path than what I intended. But the first 6 are very much mine and my philosophy.